The morning sun was streaming into the third floor of Hollowbrook High School. Chanel Tyson adjusted the straps of her backpack as she walked toward room 307. At 16, she had learned to navigate these hallways with quiet confidence. Her box braids were pulled back into a neat ponytail, and she was wearing her usual outfit: jeans, a pink t-shirt, and a pale blue hooded sweatshirt. She stopped in front of the classroom door and took a deep breath. When she walked in, the classroom was half full. Morning light illuminated Mr. Hollander's desk. The other students were gathered in groups, laughing and chatting. Chanel made her way to her usual spot near the back. The front rows were, in a way, informally reserved for certain students. It was almost like an unwritten rule. It was as if the students sitting in the front row were privileged. "Hi," Chanel said. Darnell looked up from his notebook when Chanel sat down next to him. He was one of only 3 black students in the AP class, quiet but smart. "Did you finish your homework?" he asked. "Every question." "The last one took a long time, but I solved it," Chanel replied. "Me too. I'm sure Mr. Hollander will write it on the board today. He always picks the hardest ones," Darnell said. As if summoned, Mr. Hollander entered the classroom with determined steps. He was in his early 40s, tall and slender. He was wearing pressed beige pants and a light blue button-down shirt. "Good morning, class," Mr. Hollander said. "I hope everyone finished last night's homework. There are some particularly challenging problems we need to review," he said. The bell rang. The remaining students rushed to their seats. Ashley Trent walked in at the last minute, her designer bag swinging, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. With a bright smile, she slid into her seat in the front row. "Sorry, Mr. Hollander, the student council meeting ran late," said Ashley. "No problem at all, Miss Trent. Don't rush to take your seat," said Mr. Hollander. His attitude toward the students in the front row was always different. Chanel made eye contact with Darnell. Ashley was late at least twice a week, and she was forgiven immediately every time. Chanel had been late once, and Mr. Hollander had given her a tardy slip and deducted points from her attendance score. He was clearly discriminating among the students. "All right then," said Mr. Hollander, turning to the board and unscrewing the cap of his pen. "Let's review the 7th problem from last night," he said. "This is a particularly difficult application where the chain rule is combined with the implicit derivative. Who would like to show the solution?" he asked. Chanel's hand shot up immediately. She had solved this problem 3 different ways to make sure she understood it completely. Her heart was racing, but she kept her hand steady and held it up. She was nervous around Mr. Hollander, but she wanted to answer because she knew the solution. Mr. Hollander's eyes scanned the classroom, passing right over Chanel as if she were invisible. "Is there no one?" he asked. "I know this is an advanced topic, but surely someone has tried it," he said. Chanel's arm began to ache, but she kept her hand raised. The other students around her shifted uneasily. They could all see her hand. Only Mr. Hollander couldn't. "Miss Trent, would you like to try this?" Mr. Hollander asked. Ashley twirled a strand of blonde hair around her finger. "Well, I'm not entirely sure how far I've gotten in the assignment. Maybe someone else," she said. "No problem at all," said Mr. Hollander, his patience seemingly endless. "Let's go over the first steps together. What would your initial approach be?" he asked politely. "I think maybe we should take the derivative first?" Her voice finally rose, turning the statement into a question. "That's not exactly the right starting point," he said gently, without a trace of criticism. "Remember, we need to determine the outer and inner functions before applying the chain rule. Is there anyone who'd like to help her?" Mr. Hollander asked again. Now a few hands went up, including Chanel's, which had never been lowered. Mr. Hollander called on Marcus, the white student in the second row, and he gave a partially correct answer. Throughout all this, Chanel's hand remained raised. She was completely ignored. Finally, when no other student could find the complete solution, Mr. Hollander sighed. "Well, I suppose I'll have to demonstrate this myself," he said, turning to the board and beginning to write. When he finished, he turned back with satisfaction. "See? It's not that hard once you break it down properly. Now let's move on to something harder," he said. He wrote a new equation on the board. Chanel immediately realized what kind of problem it was. "This," said Mr. Hollander, "is the kind of problem you might encounter on the AP exam. How many of you feel confident enough to try this?" he asked the class. Before Mr. Hollander had even finished speaking, Chanel's hand shot up. This was exactly the kind of problem she loved. Complex but beautiful in the way the pieces fit together. Mr. Hollander raised his eyebrows when he saw her hand. A short, dismissive chuckle escaped his lips. "Anyone else?" he asked. The silence grew uncomfortable. Chanel refused to fade into the background, keeping her hand raised. She could feel her classmates' eyes on her. In the front row, Ashley whispered something to her friend, and the two giggled. "Mr. Hollander," Chanel said in a clear voice, "I know the solution." His smile hardened. "Is that so? Well, Miss Tyson, since you're so eager, come up here and show us what you've got. Let's give someone who truly belongs in this class a chance to try their hand at real math, he added. He was clearly looking down on Chanel. Chanel was fully aware of everything that was happening. She knew how she was being treated. She had experienced these looks and this humiliation before, so it was a familiar feeling, but at the same time she felt her resolve growing. Chanel stood up and began to walk. The other students in the class were watching her. She took the pen from Mr. Hollander's hand. She could sense in his eyes that he was hoping she would fail. Chanel then began to write. Her hand moved steadily across the white surface, and she began to solve the problem. Step by step, the solution emerged. She mentally checked every calculation to make sure there were no mistakes. When she reached the final answer, she confirmed it clearly, neatly circled the result, and stepped back. The entire class had fallen silent. Mr. Hollander's expression had changed. His usual self-satisfaction had turned into a cold, tense look. As he stared desperately at the board, searching for any mistake, his jaw clenched visibly. He remained silent for a long time. "You must have seen this problem online," he said finally. "There are websites where students share their solutions. That doesn't mean you actually understand it," he continued. The accusation hung in the air. Chanel's face flushed. She began to speak. "I've seen this approach before," Mr. Hollander continued, his voice growing even more firm. "These aren't your own steps. You're just copying what you've memorized," he said. "That's not true," said Chanel. "I can explain every step. If you'd like, I can solve it differently," she said. Mr. Hollander said, "There's no need for that," grabbed the eraser, and began erasing her solution with aggressive movements, ruining her work. "You may sit down, Miss Tyson," he said. Chanel didn't move. "But I solved it correctly," she said. "I said sit down." His voice echoed through the classroom. "Your attitude is becoming a problem," said Mr. Hollander. The students around them began shifting uneasily. A few exchanged shocked glances. In the back, Darnell looked furious, but no one spoke up. Chanel stood there for another moment, watching her perfect solution vanish as eraser dust drifted in the sunlight. Finally, she returned to her desk. As she passed Ashley's desk, she heard a whispered comment, "How desperate to get attention." Then came more giggles. The rest of the class passed in a blur. Mr. Hollander moved on to easier problems, called on Ashley twice more, and praised her stumbling attempts. Later, when he wrote another complex equation, Chanel didn't raise her hand even though she knew the answer immediately. At 9:45, the bell rang. The students gathered their books and headed off to their third class. As Chanel stuffed her textbook into her backpack, Mr. Hollander's voice cut through the noise. "Miss Tyson, one moment." Darnell stood at the door waiting, but Chanel shook her head slightly. Darnell reluctantly walked away, glancing back anxiously. Chanel approached Mr. Hollander's desk where he was writing something on a pink slip of paper. Without looking up, Mr. Hollander handed the paper to her. Chanel took the paper and read, "Detention. Today, 3:30 p.m. Reason, behavior that disrupts the flow of the lesson, and a confrontational attitude. Why?" Her voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. "I answered your question. You asked who wanted to solve it. Your attitude was inappropriate," said Mr. Hollander, finally lifting his head to look at her with cold eyes from behind his glasses. "Arguing with the teacher, making accusations, disrupting the learning environment. You'll be staying after school this afternoon." "But I didn't argue." Chanel cut herself off when she noticed the satisfaction on the man's face. Saying more would only make things worse. "That's all, Miss Tyson." His tone was dismissive and final. Chanel crumpled the pink detention slip she was clutching tightly in her fist and walked out of the classroom. The hallway was filled with students moving between classes. The sounds formed a wall of noise echoing in the distance. She walked on autopilot toward her locker. That was ridiculous. A quiet voice beside her. Head janitor, Mr. Rhodes, was emptying a nearby trash can. He was an elderly black man, perhaps in his 60s, with gray hair and gentle eyes. "What she did in there? I was cleaning the hallway. I heard it from the door." Chanel looked around, but the crowd in the hallway provided her with cover. "It doesn't matter. There's nothing I can do." "Maybe not today," Mr. Rhodes said quietly as he moved toward the next trash can. "But patterns eventually come to light. Just keep being perfect. The truth will come out." Before Chanel could respond, she started walking down the hallway. But his words didn't leave her mind. Not during biology class, not at lunch, not for the rest of the day, and not even when she went to detention. The detention room was on the first floor and furnished with outdated desks. Librarian Ms. Patterson was supervising from the teacher's desk. Chanel was the only student there. She sat by the window and watched the afternoon sun cast shadows across the sports fields. Ms. Patterson looked up from her book. "Why are you here, sweetie?" "Because I solved a math problem correctly," Chanel said, a bitter tone in her voice. The librarian's eyebrows raised, but she didn't press the matter further. "Use this time to study, I suppose." Chanel took out her math book but couldn't concentrate. The events of that morning kept replaying in her mind. Mr. Hollander's dismissive laugh, his ignoring her until he was sure she'd fail, His accusation that she'd cheated, his erasing her perfect solution. It was becoming impossible to ignore this pattern. How many times had he promised her this semester? Maybe 3 times. Had he ever praised her work? Never. Had he ever given Ashley a chance? Countless times. The clock ticked slowly. 3:45, 4:15. At 4:30, Ms. Patterson looked up. "All right, Chanel, you can go. Don't get yourself into trouble." The school was nearly empty. She could hear the echoes of basketball practice and band rehearsal in the hallways. Outside, the autumn air was cool, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass. Her mother's old Honda Civic was waiting in the pickup lane. Chanel slid into the passenger seat and plopped her backpack down on the floor. "You're late." Wanda looked at her daughter with immediate concern. "What happened?" Chanel buckled her seatbelt. The slip of paper indicating her detention was still in her pocket. "Mr. Hollander gave me a ticket." "A ticket? You?" Wanda put the car in park and turned to face her fully. "For what?" "For solving a math problem correctly." The words came out tired and flat. Chanel explained everything. The complex equation, Mr. Hollander's dismissive attitude, his derogatory comment about the people who truly belong, her own perfect solution, the accusation that she'd cheated, and the punishment she received for disruptive behavior. Wanda's hands clenched on the steering wheel. "Did he punish you because you were right?" "He punished me because I made him look bad." Chanel pulled out the pink slip. "This is the 3rd time this semester, Mom. Every time I respond to something she doesn't approve of, I get punished." As other cars came and went, they sat in the departure lane. The afternoon sun was streaming diagonally through the windshield. "We're going to do something about this," Wanda said, her voice firm. "I'll call the school tomorrow. I'll request a meeting with Principal Carter. This is discrimination, and it has to stop." "Mom, that'll just make things worse." "Is that worse than getting detention for doing your homework?" Wanda shook her head. "No, I didn't work double shifts to get you into AP classes so a teacher could tear you down just because you're smart. We're going to handle this." They drove home in silence, watching the familiar streets pass by. Hollowbrook was a small town where everyone knew everyone else, where the high school was the pride of the community, and where going against the system meant creating ripples that would last a lifetime. Their apartment was in a modest complex on the east side. Despite working 50 hours a week at the hospital, Wanda kept the 2-bedroom apartment spotless. A familiar scent greeted them: vanilla candles, coffee, and food simmering in the slow cooker. "Get started on your homework," said Wanda, hanging up her keys. "I'll call you when dinner's ready." Chanel retreated to the small bedroom, decorated with math competition ribbons and posters of famous mathematicians. Katherine Johnson was smiling down from her desk. Mae Jemison stood by the bookshelf. Women who had overcome obstacles and proven their intelligence despite the skeptics. She pulled out her calculus notebook, but instead of doing her homework, she opened a new page and began making a list. September 12. Mr. Hollander called on me once during the entire class. He called on Ashley Trent 7 times. September 19. Even though I had shown all the calculations, my perfect homework was marked down for insufficient explanation. Ashley's incomplete homework, however, received a 95%. September 26. I asked a clarifying question and was told, "This isn't a remedial math class." On the same day, I patiently explained the basics to Ashley 3 times. As I recalled the events one by one, the list grew longer. They weren't dramatic moments, just small interruptions, indifference, and the constant accumulation of double standards. When put into writing, this pattern became undeniable. At dinner, they sat at the small kitchen table. The evening news was mumbling from the TV. Wanda had made chicken and rice, a comforting meal that usually made everything better. "I want you to document everything," said Wanda. "Every time he treats you differently, every unfair grade, every comment implying you don't belong here. Dates, times, witnesses. We'll need proof." "Proof for what?" "To file a complaint, to show them what's going on." Wanda looked into her eyes. "Sweetheart, you're smart. You belong in that class. You deserve to be there without being punished. I'll fight anyone who says otherwise." That night, as Chanel lay in bed, she gazed at the stars glowing in the darkness of the ceiling. They were remnants from when she was 12. She thought of Mr. Hollander's face when she'd solved that equation flawlessly, the crack in his certainty before his ego rebuilt the walls. She thought of Mr. Rhodes' words, "Patterns eventually reveal themselves," and her list was growing with every event she remembered. Perhaps it was time to stop accepting this pattern. Time to bring it to light. Outside his window, the night was clear and cool, the stars appearing one by one. Tomorrow he would return to that classroom, to be ignored, dismissed, and belittled once again. But tomorrow he would also begin to pay closer attention, not just to math, but to everything, every act of belittlement, every double standard, every moment proving what she already knew. Mr. Hollander's issue wasn't with her answers. The issue was with who gave the answers. And this was worth documenting, fighting against, and refusing to accept as normal. The battle was beginning. She was ready. Morning sunlight filtered through the dusty windows of the detention room, Chanel sat alone at 7:15 a.m., 30 minutes before the first class began. She was serving the detention Mr. Hollander called morning reflection time. She had racked up 3 detentions in 2 weeks. Each followed the same pattern. Give the right answer. Let Mr. Hollander find a flaw and eventually end up here. The room smelled of old textbooks and floor polish. Chanel spread her math homework out on the desk. At least here she could work without Mr. Hollander's comments. Her pencil moved steadily as she solved problems most seniors found impossible. From the hallway came the soft rustle of Mr. Rhodes' dust cloth. Through the small window she could see him working methodically, following the same routine he'd kept for 23 years. Their eyes met, and after Mr. Rhodes nodded, he continued on his way. At 7:40, sounds echoed down the hallway, the sharp click of heels followed by Mr. Hollander's deeper voice. Chanel looked up from her work. "Oh my God, you should have seen his face when I told him I wasn't studying." Ashley Trent's laughter pierced the thin walls. More giggles came from her friends. "Mr. Hollander adores me. It's like, if you talk to him, studying with him is a breeze." The voices stopped right outside the detention room. Chanel froze, her pen suspended in midair. "Miss Trent, regarding yesterday's exam." Mr. Hollander's voice was warm, nothing like the cold tone he usually used with Chanel. "I'll let you retake the exam. Your score doesn't reflect your true knowledge." "Really? Oh my God, thank you so much." Ashley's gratitude sounded rehearsed. "I was so stressed out because of the student council and the dance committee." "I completely understand. You have so many responsibilities. Come see me during my prep period tomorrow. Let's go over the issues together before you retake the exam." "That would be great. You're the best, Mr. Hollander." Their voices faded away. Chanel sat motionless, replaying what she'd heard over and over in her mind. Ashley had failed an exam, the very same one Chanel had aced, and Mr. Hollander was allowing her to retake it with a private tutoring session. When Chanel had asked about extra credit last week, she'd been told, "Grades reflect effort, Miss Tyson." She pulled out her notebook and added this to yesterday's list. October 3rd, 7:40 a.m. "I heard Mr. H offer Ashley a one-on-one tutoring session to retake yesterday's exam. I got a 100 on that same exam. When I asked about extra credit last week, I was told, grades reflect effort." The list was growing. It was now 3 pages long, single-spaced, documenting every incident. Seeing it all in one place made the pattern undeniable. The morning bell rang at 7:45. Chanel gathered her things and headed to first period. The hallways were filled with students rushing to class. "Hey, Chanel." Darnell caught up to her by her locker. His usual smile seemed forced. "Morning detention again? 3rd time this month." Chanel turned her combination lock. "You?" "Yeah, my 2nd. His jaw tightened. "When I asked Coach Harrison why I was sent to the bench for being 2 minutes late while Jake was late 15 minutes and still got to play, he said I was acting up." Chanel pulled out her English textbook. "Have you noticed it always happens to us? You, me, Marcus? But Ashley is 20 minutes late and they say, 'It's no problem, don't rush.' Believe me, I've noticed." Darnell lowered his voice. "My dad tells me to keep my head down and not cause trouble. He says I need good grades for college. But watching them get away with things that would get us kicked out of school, it's tough." The warning bell rang. There were 2 minutes left before class. "Are you documenting this?" Chanel asked. "Are you writing it down? Should I?" "My mom says yes." "Dates, times, what happened, witnesses, evidence." Chanel paused. "Do you want to compare our notes sometime?" Darnell's expression changed. "Yeah, my cousin went through something similar. She said the school administration finally listened to her thanks to her documentation." They parted ways on the stairs. Chanel went up to the 3rd floor. Her stomach tightened as she approached room 307. Through the window, she saw Mr. Hollander starting to write down the heating issue. She took her usual seat. Ashley arrived a few minutes later, waved to Mr. Hollander, and sat down in the front row. Mr. Hollander responded with a warm smile. "Good morning, class." Mr. Hollander put down his pen. "I hope everyone is prepared for today's short quiz on Chapter 7. A collective groan was heard. Chanel's hand reached for her backpack, where she had reviewed every topic and solved practice problems until she mastered them the night before. Mr. Hollander walked between the desks, handing out the papers. When he reached Chanel's desk, he placed the paper on the table without looking at her. When he reached Ashley's desk, however, his demeanor changed completely. "You'll do great, Miss Trent." The test was challenging but fair. Chanel worked methodically, showing each step, and double-checked her calculations. She finished with 10 minutes to spare and used the remaining time to review her answers. The students around her were still working, some looked nervous. Ashley had her head down, moving her pencil hesitantly. When Mr. Hollander announced the time was up, a few students groaned because they hadn't finished. "Please put down your pencils." He collected the papers. When he picked up Chanel's exam paper, he paused and examined her work. His jaw tightened slightly. He said nothing and moved on to the next row. The rest of the class passed between notes and examples. Mr. Hollander didn't call on Chanel even once, despite her raising her hand. He called on Ashley 3 times and praised her for excellent questions that highlighted a fundamental misunderstanding. After class, as Chanel was gathering her things, Mr. Rhodes appeared with a trash can. He fixed his eyes on her, tilting his head slightly, a sign he wanted to speak. He waited until the classroom had emptied. "Miss Tyson," Mr. Rhodes said quietly, "you dropped something next to your seat." He held out a folded piece of paper. Chanel took it in surprise. She hadn't dropped anything. Mr. Rhodes gave her a meaningful look and went on his way. She didn't open the paper until she reached the hallway. "I've been watching you. I've been here for 23 years. I see certain things. If you need someone to verify what you've recorded, find me in the janitor's office after school." Rhodes, a witness. Someone who's seen this system for years. Her mother had said evidence was important. Mr. Rhodes was offering to provide it. When lunchtime came, Chanel was sitting at the corner table next to the biographies in the library. Instead of doing homework, she'd opened her notebook and was jotting down this morning's events. "Is this seat taken?" A soft voice. Maya Chen from AP Calculus was holding her lunch tray. "Go ahead." Chanel slid her notebook aside. Maya sat down and carefully unwrapped her sandwich. "I wanted to say what Mr. Hollander did to you isn't right. Ignoring you, making you stay after school for no reason. It's obvious." Chanel braced herself. "What do you mean?" "What I mean is I see it. We all see it." Maya's voice was just a little louder than a whisper. "Compare how he treats you and Ashley. It's not fair, and it's not just you. Last year in regular math class, there was Marcus Wheeler. Mr. Hollander did the same thing to him. He ignored him, gave him harsher grades, and constantly criticized him. Marcus switched to the lower-level math class because it wasn't worth the stress." Chanel's pen stopped. "Did he expel another student from school too?" "I think so. Marcus was really smart. He should have been in the AP class, but Mr. Hollander made his life so unbearable that he gave up too." Maya took a bite and chewed thoughtfully. "If you need someone to speak up about what you've seen, I'll do it. Why take the risk?" Maya looked into his eyes. "My family came from Taiwan with nothing. They dealt with teachers who thought Asian students didn't belong in honors classes. My mom filed complaints, fought the board, and made sure I got the classes I deserved. Someone stood up for me. I can stand up for you too." They exchanged numbers, and Maya promised to document her observations. After she left, Chanel sat down to process what had happened. This was bigger than she'd realized. It wasn't just a personal matter. It was systematic. There were chemistry and history classes in the afternoon, followed by the final bell at 3:30. Chanel made her way to the janitor's room in the basement, a small room filled with cleaning supplies. Mr. Rhodes was organizing the mops. "You're here." He gestured to a folding chair. "Sit down. We need to talk." Chanel sat down, her backpack feeling heavier. "You said you've been watching." "I've been watching teachers come and go for 23 years. Most are good people. Some have favorites. Some have blind spots. And some, like Mr. Hollander, have hidden agendas." "What do you mean?" Mr. Rhodes leaned on his desk. "I've been cleaning that classroom for 5 years. I've seen how he treats some students differently than others. I've heard his conversations when he thought no one was listening. His comments about students who don't belong in advanced classes. His remarks about lowering standards. Air quotes, a look of disgust. I've watched good students get expelled because of the unbearable conditions he imposes. Like Marcus Wheeler, Marcus was one of them. Others too." Mr. Rhodes pulled out a small notebook. "When I noticed this pattern, I started documenting it 2 years ago. It's not official. I'm just keeping records. But if you're preparing a case, I can help." He opened the notebook. Pages filled with neat handwriting. Dates, times, conversations he'd overheard, detention schedules, grade distributions he'd noticed from the posted papers. "You've been documenting all of this." Hope blossomed in Chanel's chest. "For 2 years. Someone had to do it. The school won't. The administration turns a blind eye. But if enough evidence piles up, maybe things will change." For an hour, they compared their notes. Mr. Rhodes confirmed the incidents Chanel had documented and added context she couldn't have known. He had seen Mr. Hollander give Ashley answers during exams. He had heard that he gave some students hints about exam questions in advance. He'd observed him grading the same papers differently based on the students' names. "This is a bigger issue than I thought," Chanel said, looking at the evidence spread out before them. "This isn't just a rough patch. This is systematic discrimination. That's why you need to be smart." Mr. Rhodes' tone was serious. "The administration will protect him. He's been here 5 years, tenured, the math team coach. His word against yours won't be enough. So what should I do?" "Keep documenting. Convince the other students to document as well. Build a case strong enough that they can't ignore it. When you're ready, once you've gathered enough evidence, go after them. To the school board, to the State Board of Education if necessary. But first, make sure everything is in order." Chanel left as the sunset painted the sky orange and purple. Her backpack felt heavier with the notebook containing the photocopies she'd taken from Mr. Rhodes. Evidence, proof, witnesses. At home, Wanda was in the kitchen, still wearing her apron. She glanced at Chanel's face and understood. "Tell me." Chanel spread everything out on the table. Her notebook, the copies of Mr. Rhodes' documents, Maya's number, and the ever-growing list of incidents and witnesses. Wanda listened, her expression growing increasingly serious. "This is a serious situation. It's not just a difficult teacher. It's systematic, documented discrimination. Mr. Rhodes told me to wait, to gather more evidence before going to the administration. He's right." Wanda pulled out her phone. "But I'm still gonna call tomorrow. I want to put it on record that Principal Carter knows there's a problem. The paper trail has begun. Even if he does nothing, it will be documented that we tried within the institution first." The next morning, Wanda took time off work for the meeting. Chanel sat outside Carter's office during the first period, listening to the rising voices. "You punished him for giving the right answer. Miss Tyson, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. I have the documentation for 17 incidents. Mr. Hollander is one of our most respected teachers. The math team has won the regional championship 3 years in a row. I don't care about his achievements. My daughter is being discriminated against." When the door opened, Wanda stepped out, her face tense. Principal Carter followed her with a professional blank smile. "Miss Tyson, Hollowbrook High takes all concerns seriously. I'll speak with Mr. Hollander about what your daughter has experienced." He turned to Chanel. "My door is always open." His words conveyed only one thing. His tone, however, said, "Don't cause trouble." In the car, Wanda gripped the steering wheel tightly. Her knuckles were white. "He won't do anything. He'll talk to Hollander. Hollander will say you're a difficult student, and that's it. So what do we do now? We'll keep documenting. We'll find more witnesses. We'll prepare for the fight." She was right. By the weekend, things had gotten even worse. The results of the exam Chanel had worked on all night came in. 78. It was her first B in math. Points had been deducted from correctly solved problems marked in red ink due to insufficient explanation. When Mr. Hollander returned the exams, Ashley's had a 95 on it. Chanel had seen that Ashley had left 3 questions blank and made obvious mistakes on the other 2. That afternoon, Chanel showed her exam paper to Mr. Rhodes. Mr. Rhodes took a photo of the paper, placing it next to the notes from Ashley's retake the previous day. "This is retaliation," Mr. Rhodes said in a harsh tone. "Your mom complained. Now he's punishing you." Chanel felt a chill in her stomach. She knew the results were coming, but seeing it so blatant and so vindictive made her question whether fighting back was worth it. This doubt lasted until the next math class. In that class, a new student transferred in. Jordan Morris was a black boy from the other side of town who had transferred for Hollowbrook's stronger AP program. When Jordan introduced himself, the expression on Mr. Hollander's face, a momentary unease, a tense smile told her everything. The same thing was going to happen to Jordan. Unless someone stopped it, that is. After class, Chanel caught up with Jordan in the hallway. "Can I talk to you?" Jordan looked wary but nodded. They found a quiet corner. "I know you're new here. This might sound crazy, but I need to tell you about Mr. Hollander." She told him everything. The recurring pattern, the discrimination, the evidence. Jordan listened, his face darkening. "There was a teacher like that at my last school too. My family tried to move me to another class, but the administration said I was too sensitive, so we switched schools. A fresh start, a bitter laugh. I guess there's no escape. Maybe there is." Chanel pulled out her phone. "I'm documenting everything, gathering witnesses, preparing a case. If you document it too, and we work together, maybe we can change things." Jordan studied her. "Do you really think this will work? Against a teacher the school loves?" "I don't know, but doing nothing guarantees that nothing will change." She shook her head slowly. "All right, I'm in. What do you need?" Chanel's network was growing. By the second week after her mother's complaint, 5 students were documenting the incidents. Mr. Rhodes was relaying the school administration's perspective, and Maya was taking detailed notes in class. But Mr. Hollander also escalated things. He began calling on Chanel more frequently, but only for questions he thought would trip her up. When she gave the right answer, he accused her of looking up the solution online. When she hesitated to think, he made comments about how the students weren't ready for advanced classes. The psychological warfare took its toll. Chanel's sleep was disrupted. As her energy was spent trying to get through math class and documenting the discrimination, her other grades dropped. One night, Wanda found her at 2 a.m. at the kitchen table, surrounded by notebooks and proofs, crying. "Sweetie," Wanda hugged her, "you don't have to do this. We can transfer you to another class, or even another school. But then he'll win. He'll push another student out. The next black child will go through the same thing. It never ends. Sometimes surviving is more important than winning, and sometimes surviving means standing up to them." Chanel wiped her eyes. "I'm tired, Mom. So tired. But I won't give up. Not yet." Wanda hugged her tighter. Then we'll fight together, but smartly. We'll make this case unshakable. Then we'll force them to listen. Outside, the autumn night was dark and cold, but in their small kitchen, under the harsh fluorescent light, mother and daughter sat surrounded by evidence of injustice and had begun planning their battle strategy. The battle was just beginning, but they were ready. The exam paper was placed on Chanel's desk with deliberate force, loud enough for the sound of the paper hitting the wood to be heard. Nachan's desk. She looked at the bold red numbers at the top. 100%. A perfect score. Next to it, in Mr. Hollander's handwriting, "Come see me after class." Her stomach nodded. There shouldn't have been a need for a meeting over a perfect score. Around her, other students were receiving their exams with various grades and comments. Ashley, despite apparently scoring 82%, received her exam with a cheerful "much better, Miss Trent." The rest of the class passed in a blur. Chanel couldn't focus on Mr. Hollander's lesson on derivatives. She couldn't concentrate on the example problems. Her eyes kept drifting back to that note, "Come see me after class." When the bell rang, the students filed out of the classroom, chatting as usual. Darnell stood at the door, giving her a questioning look. She shook her head slightly. Darnell reluctantly walked away. Chanel approached Mr. Hollander's desk. He was organizing papers without looking up, keeping her waiting. Finally, he set down his pen and looked at her with a cold stare. "Miss Tyson, I have concerns about your performance on the exam." "Excuse me?" Her heart was racing, but her voice remained calm. "I got all the answers right. I showed all my work." "Exactly." He stood up, walked around his desk, leaned against it, and crossed his arms. "Your work is flawless, too perfect. These solutions don't look like they were solved by a student under exam conditions. They look like they were copied from the answer key." The accusation hung in the air. "I'm saying your sudden perfect performance raises questions. You struggled on the last exam, scoring only 78. Now 2 weeks later, perfection?" His tone made it sound impossible. "That's quite a dramatic improvement, because I studied." Chanel's voice rose. "I spent hours solving practice questions. My mom quizzed me. I did everything I was supposed to do. Or you found the exam online, or you got the answers from someone." Mr. Hollander picked up a printout. "The academic integrity policy. There is zero tolerance for cheating at Hollowbrook. If I determine that academic integrity has been violated, the consequences will be severe. Suspension, a permanent record of the violation, and possible expulsion. I didn't cheat. You can test me right now. Give me any question from that test, and I'll solve it right in front of you. I know this subject like the back of my hand." "That's not necessary. I've made my decision." He pulled out another form, an academic integrity violation report. "I'm filing an official complaint with the administration. You're suspended from my class until the investigation is complete. Go to Principal Carter's office immediately. This is because my mom complained about you. You're just getting back at me." Mr. Hollander's face hardened. "This is a serious accusation, Miss Tyson. An accusation that could result in additional disciplinary action. I suggest you watch your tone." He handed her the referral form. "Now go. Principal Carter is waiting for you." Chanel took the paper with trembling hands. Her perfect test had now become evidence of a crime she hadn't committed. She stepped out of room 307. Angry tears she'd been trying to hold back blurred her vision until she was alone. The hallway was crowded with students changing classes. Chanel made her way through the crowd toward the administrative offices on the first floor. Her phone vibrated. A message from Darnell. What happened? She didn't reply. She couldn't find the words yet. Principal Carter's office smelled of coffee and leather. His secretary told Chanel to wait while she called Wanda at the hospital. From behind the door, Chanel heard Carter's voice whispering into the phone. 20 minutes later, Wanda burst in, still wearing her scrubs and a dangling hospital ID badge. Her face was tense with suppressed anger. "What happened?" she asked. Chanel handed her the academic integrity violation report. Wanda read it, clenching her jaw with every line. "Does getting perfect scores mean cheating? Are you serious?" Before Chanel could answer, Carter's door opened. He was in a suit and tie, his face bearing a professional neutrality. "Miss Tyson, Chanel, please come in." His office was filled with awards. Hollowbrook's 20 years of achievements were displayed like trophies. As he settled behind his large desk, Wanda and Chanel sat down in the chairs across from him. "I'm sure you understand why we take academic integrity seriously," Carter began, his tone conveying a reasonable demeanor. Mr. Hollander raised concerns regarding Chanel's exam performance that warrant an investigation. "She got a perfect score," Wanda said sharply. "Since when has that been a cause for suspicion?" Given the dramatic deviation from her previous performance, combined with the complexity of the subject and the short time frame, she studied for hours. "I watched her." Wanda's voice was as hard as steel. "My daughter is smart. She works harder than any other student in that class. The only reason this is suspicious to Mr. Hollander is that he refuses to accept a black girl could score higher than his favorites. A fleeting change crossed Carter's face. A brief unease appeared before he put on his professional mask. Miss Tyson, making allegations of discrimination won't help Chanel's case. We're not making allegations. We have documents. Wanda pulled out Chanel's notebook. 17 different instances of unfair treatment in 2 months. Witnesses, patterns of grading discrimination. Your teacher is taking revenge because I filed a complaint, and now you're helping her. I'm following protocol. Protocol is to investigate legitimate concerns, not to validate baseless accusations. Wanda stood up and leaned over Carter's desk. Test him. Right now. Give him any question from that exam. Let him solve it right in front of you. Prove he knows this material. Carter shifted uncomfortably. That's not standard procedure, because standard procedure protects teachers, not students, especially black students who challenge white teachers. Wanda's voice dropped dangerously low. I understand what you're doing. You're protecting him because his success in math competitions makes your school look good. But I'm going to the school board, to state officials, to every news channel in this area, because this is illegal discrimination. Carter was tapping his fingers on the desk. Miss Tyson, I strongly advise you not to make threats. This isn't a threat, it's a promise. If you don't resolve this by Monday, I'll file a formal complaint with every authority I can find. Wanda took Chanel's hand. Come on, sweetie, let's go. As Wanda's anger spread, they left Carter's office. In the parking lot, Wanda stopped, leaned against their car, and took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, Mom, Chanel said quietly. I know you have to quit your job. Don't say that. Wanda hugged her tightly. Don't apologize. None of this is your fault. However, by Friday afternoon, Chanel had officially been placed on administrative leave until the investigation concluded. 3 days, then 2 weeks, then 3 more. She spent time at home, keeping up with other classes using online materials, and couldn't attend her math class. The gap in her schedule felt as though a limb had been severed. The retaliation didn't end there. On Monday of the second week, Wanda came home from her shift with a pale, tense face. They've opened an investigation against me at work. She collapsed into a kitchen chair. Someone filed a complaint. It's completely made up, but... Her voice cracked. The timing is perfect, isn't it? Right after I threatened the school board. Chanel felt a chill in her stomach. Do you think the school? I think someone's trying to send a message. If you cause trouble, trouble will find you. Wanda rubbed her face. Remember that hospital administrator who called me? Her daughter is in Mr. Hollander's math class. She's Ashley Trent's friend. The web was bigger than they realized. The connections ran deeper. Mr. Hollander wasn't just a bad teacher. He was part of a system that protected its own interests and punished dissenters. That night, Chanel sat at the kitchen table surrounded by documents. The notebooks, Mr. Rhodes' photocopies, Maya's observations, Jordan's notes, Darnell's experiences. Everything was piling up, but was it enough? Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. This is Marcus Wheeler. Maya gave me your number. I heard what happened. I want to help. Chanel looked at the message. Marcus, the student expelled last year, who had dropped out rather than confront Mr. Hollander's discrimination. She called him. He answered on the first ring. I should have stood up to him, Marcus said without greeting her. When Hollander did that to me, I should have stood up to him. But I was tired, my family said. It wasn't worth the stress, and I gave up. I dropped the class. I took the easy way out. It's not your fault, I know. But if I'd been braver, I could have stopped him from doing the same to other students. That's why I want to help you now. I've kept everything. Every assignment paper graded unfairly. Every disciplinary notice. Every email questioning whether I belong here. I'll testify. I'll go before the board. Whatever you need. Will you do this? Are you willing to risk them coming after you? I'm at a different school now. They can't touch me. Maybe if enough people speak up, they'll have to listen. By the weekend, Chanel had 7 students ready to testify. Not just current students, but alumni. Transfer students, anyone who had taken her class and noticed this pattern. Mr. Rhodes spent his evenings photocopying documents, grade distributions revealing systematic inequalities, disciplinary records. 87% of the students in the advanced math class, which made up only 23% of the student body, were students of color. Mr. Hollander's parking lot conversations, complaining about lowered standards and diversity quotas. Wanda prepared the case with methodical precision, organizing everything at night, creating timelines and summaries. The hospital investigation was ongoing. The pressure was mounting, but she refused to back down. On Wednesday of the 3rd week, everything changed. Chanel was studying for her online math class at home, refusing to fall behind even though she'd been suspended from school, when her phone rang. It was Maya. You have to hear this. I was at the library, studying in the study room. Ashley and her friends were in the next room. The walls are thin. They were talking about you. Wait, let me guess. Were they saying I deserved it? Worse than that. Ashley was bragging that her mom helped get your mom fired. Then, Maya's voice dropped. She mentioned that Mr. Hollander tutored her before the exams. She said he gave her the questions ahead of time so she could study. Even though she was the one who knew the answers beforehand, she laughed as she explained how you were accused of cheating. Chanel's grip on the phone tightened. Did you record it? Even better. The library's security cameras record audio in the study rooms. It's a privacy issue for group projects. I went to Mr. Rhodes and he helped me request the footage under the open records policy. The process takes a few days. But if Ashley admits she received help beforehand, this proves that Mr. Hollander gave some students an unfair advantage while accusing others of cheating simply because they succeeded honestly. Exactly. That weekend, Mr. Rhodes organized an informal meeting at the church, a small community center that had served Hollowbrook's black community for 60 years. When Chanel and Wanda arrived, they saw that 23 people were already there. Parents of students who had faced discrimination, former students who had been expelled, community members who had been watching this situation unfold for years. Deacon Harris, who had led the church for 40 years, stood at the front. We've watched our children struggle at that school for far too long. We've watched them be told they aren't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. We stayed silent, hoping things would get better. He looked at Chanel. This young woman didn't stay silent. Now she's paying the price. It's time to stand with her. People shared their stories one by one. A mother whose son was removed from advanced classes despite high test scores. A father whose daughter was told she was not college-ready despite a 3.8 GPA. Former students who left Hollowbrook with broken hearts, convinced they weren't smart enough, yet had succeeded in schools where teachers believed in them. This pattern was undeniable. Mr. Hollander was just one teacher, but he was part of a larger system that had been failing black students for decades. We need to go to the school board, said Wanda, standing up. With all of this, every story, every piece of evidence, every witness, let's show them the pattern they've been ignoring. They'll try to brush this off, said someone. They'll say we're being too sensitive, that it's all just a coincidence. Then let's document it in such detail that they can't do that. Chanel stood up too. We have our grade records, suspension statistics, emails, statements from many students over the years. There's an audio recording where Ashley admits that Mr. Hollander helped her beforehand. There are Mr. Rhodes's 5 years of observations. Over 5 years, there are 73 documented incidents involving 17 students. This isn't a coincidence. This is systematic discrimination. She pulled out her phone and showed him the compilation. If we present this properly, they'll have to admit it. Deacon Harris nodded. Then let's do this right. Let's get organized. Let's prepare. Let's demand justice. They spent 2 weeks preparing. Wanda took unpaid leave. She'd also been suspended due to the investigation. Mr. Rhodes used his connections at the school to gather more documents. Marcus drove over to compile evidence from his own experiences. The library security camera footage arrived. There was a clear audio recording of Ashley bragging about Mr. Hollander's private tutoring sessions. In these sessions, she boasted that he gave us the exam questions in advance. She admitted she had never earned her grades honestly and had gained an unfair advantage throughout the entire semester. Chanel listened to the recording 3 times. Feelings of anger and righteousness were intertwined. This was proof, irrefutable, recorded proof that the system was rigged. On the first Monday of November, Wanda formally requested to address the school board at the monthly meeting. By law, school districts are required to give community members a chance to speak during public comment periods. The secretary tried to limit the time to 3 minutes, but Wanda had done her homework. State education law allowed up to 10 minutes for issues involving student discrimination. The school board meeting was scheduled for November 15. She had 2 weeks to prepare her presentation, organize witnesses, and build an irrefutable case. Principal Carter had called Wanda 2 days earlier. Ms. Tyson, I strongly urge you to reconsider your decision. Public accusations could harm everyone, including Chanel. If we speak privately, perhaps we can reach a resolution. The time for private meetings has passed, Wanda said in a cold tone. You had 3 chances to conduct a proper investigation. You chose to protect a discriminatory teacher. Now we're taking this to those who hold real authority over you. I'm trying to prevent a scandal. Good. I want a scandal. I want everyone in this district to see what's happening to students like my daughter. We'll meet on Monday, Principal Carter. The night before the board meeting, Chanel couldn't sleep. Lying in bed, she thought about everything that had happened up to this point. The first day she laughed at Mr. Hollander's raised hand. The erasure of the perfect solution. Detentions. Unfair grades. Baseless accusations. The 3-week suspension that kept her away from the class she loved. Her phone vibrated. A message from Darnell. We've got your back tomorrow. All of us. Then Jordan. Ready to make some noise? Maya. The truth is coming out. Marcus. It's time to hold them accountable. The messages were coming in one by one. Students, parents, community members, people who had been silent for far too long, watching the injustice unfold and feeling powerless. But they weren't powerless. Not anymore. Not when they were together. Chanel got up and went to the kitchen where Wanda was reviewing her notes for the 100th time. Her mother looked up, tired but determined. "Can't you sleep either?" Wanda asked. Chanel shook her head. "I'm so tense." "Me too." But at the same time, Wanda took her hand. "At the same time, I'm proud. I'm so proud of you. For not backing down. For fighting even if it costs you. For believing you deserve better. I learned that from you." As midnight turned to morning, mother and daughter sat together in the quiet kitchen, preparing for battle. Outside, the November night was cold and dark. But inside, surrounded by the evidence of the truth, they felt strong. Tomorrow they would enter that school board meeting with the stories of 17 students, 5 years of documentation, recorded evidence of cheating and favoritism, statistical proof of systemic bias, and finally, a community that had found its collective voice. Tomorrow they would demand justice. Tomorrow they would make themselves heard. And whether they won or lost, succeeded or failed, Chanel knew one thing. She would never again accept being treated as if she were less than she was. She would never again remain silent when she deserved to speak. She would never again allow anyone to convince her that she didn't belong in the room she had earned the right to enter. The fight was just beginning, but they were ready. The Hollowbrook School District Board meeting room was packed well beyond capacity. What was normally a quiet Monday night meeting had turned into an electric atmosphere. Every seat was taken. People were standing along the walls, and local news cameras were set up in the back. The November evening air was thick with anticipation. Chanel sat in the front row next to her mother, her hands clenched tightly together to keep them from trembling. Behind them sat 17 students and alumni, ready to testify. Mr. Rhodes was there, wearing a pressed suit instead of his gray uniform. Darnell, Jordan, Maya, Marcus Wheeler, they were all there. Deacon Harris had brought 23 community members. The small room could barely fit them all. Up front, 5 school board members sat behind a raised platform. Their nameplates read, from left to right, Jennifer Kim, Board Chair, Robert Morrison, Patricia Hayes, David Chen, and Margaret Williams. They looked uncomfortable in the face of the crowd's size, the cameras, and the barely containable energy. Principal Carter was sitting on the sidelines with the district attorney. Both wore expressions of professional concern. Mr. Hollander was not there. His absence seemed deliberate and strategic. Board Chair Kim opened the meeting at exactly 7 p.m. The usual procedures were wrapped up in a flash. Budget reports, facility updates, routine approvals. Finally, at 7:43 p.m., Kim glanced at the agenda and cleared her throat. "We will now hear Ms. Wanda Tyson's public statement regarding concerns about the treatment of students. Ms. Tyson, you have 10 minutes. Wanda stood up and gathered her materials. She was wearing her best outfit, a navy blazer and pants, professional and flawless. As she approached the podium, she caught Chanel's eye and gave a slight nod. They had rehearsed this dozens of times. Every word mattered. Every piece of evidence had been arranged to make the greatest impact. This was their moment to bring 5 years of injustice to light. "Good evening," Wanda began, her voice firm and clear. "My name is Wanda Tyson. I'm a registered nurse at County General, a single mother and a taxpayer in this district for 17 years. I'm here because this school system is failing students like my daughter through systematic discrimination that's been allowed to continue unchecked." She pressed a button. The screen behind the podium lit up. "Pattern of discrimination. Mr. Hollander's AP Math class 2019-2024. My daughter Chanel is a student who fought to take the AP Calculus class even though she was told she wasn't ready. A student who consistently earned A's. She loves math. She's very smart in this subject. From the very first day in Mr. Hollander's class, she was subjected to treatment designed to push her out of the class." Wanda moved to the next slide. A timeline of events, each was documented with dates, times, and descriptions. The board members leaned forward and began reading. September 12. Chanel's hand remained raised for 12 minutes. Mr. Hollander ended the class without calling on her even once. September 19. Despite having completed the required work, her perfect assignment was marked down for insufficient explanation. On the same day, another student received a perfect score for an incomplete assignment. She clicked through the slides one by one. 73 documented incidents over 4 months. Each might seem insignificant on its own, but taken together they paint an undeniable picture. "But this isn't just about my daughter," Wanda continued, her voice growing stronger. "This is a system that goes back 5 years. A system that affects many students, destroys their academic confidence, and drives talented young people away from advanced mathematics." She gestured toward the audience. "Here tonight I have 17 of my students ready to testify about similar experiences. But first, I want you to hear from someone who has been observing this situation longer than any of us. Mr. Rhodes stood up and walked toward the podium with quiet dignity. At 63, he stood with the gravity gained from decades of observing human behavior. My name is James Rhodes. I've been working as the head janitor at Hollowbrook High School for 23 years. I clean Mr. Hollander's classroom every day. I've been observing his teaching for 5 years. He pulled out a when I realized this was a pattern, I began documenting what I saw 2 years ago. He opened a marked page. I observed that during Mr. Hollander's private tutoring sessions, he gave exam questions in advance to certain students. I heard him refer to Black and Hispanic students as a diversity quota that lowers class standards. I saw him grade the same papers differently depending on whose name was on them. The board member's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine concern. Williams, an elderly Black woman, was furiously taking notes. Over the past 5 years, I've seen 4 students drop out of his advanced classes. All of them were students of color. They all told me the same thing. They couldn't endure the constant belittling, unfair grading, and psychological warfare. They gave up on math entirely, not because they were unqualified, but because Mr. Hollander convinced them they were unqualified. He placed his notebook on the lectern. I'm here because I'm tired of watching talented young people by a system that protects bad teachers. I'm here because records matter. And I'm here because someone needs to speak up for the students who've been pushed out of the system without being able to speak for themselves. When Mr. Rhodes returned to his seat, silence reigned in the courtroom, broken only by the sound of the court reporter's pen and the quiet hum of the camera. Wanda moved to a new slide, statistical analysis. Mr. Rhodes helped me compile these figures. Over the past 5 years, 73% of Black students in Mr. Hollander's AP math classes dropped out, while only 12% of white students dropped out. 89% of those referred to the disciplinary committee from his class were Black students, whereas they make up only 31% of his class were Black. The average grade for Black students, 2.1. The average for white students, 3.4. She let the numbers hang in the air. Kim's face had gone pale. Morrison crossed his arms defensively and leaned back. Now I want to show you something, said Wanda, her voice taking on an even colder tone. Because the most damning evidence isn't what Mr. Hollander did to the students he discriminated against. It's what he did for the students he favored. She nodded to Maya. Maya connected her phone to the presentation system. This is an audio recording from the Hollowbrook High School Library Security System, recorded on October 28. The speakers are Ashley Trent and her friends. The recording played. Ashley's voice was bright and clear. Oh my God, you should have seen Chanel's face when she was accused of cheating. I mean, come on. Mr. Hollander gave us the exam questions a full week in advance. We already knew all the answers. And she's getting suspended for actually studying. That's ridiculous. Her friend's voice. Wait, doesn't he give you private lessons every week? Ashley. Yeah, but it's not really tutoring. Basically, he tells us what's going to be on the exams and tests. My mom calls it academic coaching. I call it getting free A's by pretending to care about math. More laughter. Then Ashley again. The best part is Chanel probably studied for hours for that exam, while I just glanced at the notes from our lesson the day before. Mr. Hollander likes me. He told my mom I'm exactly the kind of student who embodies Hollowbrook's excellence. The recording ended. The silence was deafening. Board member Hayes was the first to speak, his voice tense with anger. Are you telling me that a teacher at this school gave exam information to some students in advance while accusing others who performed well honestly of cheating? Exactly, said Wanda. And when my daughter was accused of academic dishonesty on an exam, this same teacher was teaching the answers in advance to her favorite students. Principal Carter rose halfway to his feet. Board Chair, if I may, these are serious allegations that require context. Your turn will come, Principal Carter, Kim said in a sharp tone, setting aside her professional demeanor. Please sit down, Wanda continued undeterred. 2 things happened after I filed a discrimination complaint against Principal Carter. First, my daughter was suspended from school on baseless charges of cheating. Second, at my workplace, an investigation was suddenly opened accusing me of tampering with patient records. This investigation began the very week I threatened to bring this matter before this committee. She clicked on a timeline comparing the dates of the complaints with the retaliatory actions. The hospital administrator who initiated my investigation. His daughter attends Ms. Hollander's math class. She's a friend of Ashley Trent's friend. The connections run very deep. This isn't just about a bad teacher. It's a system that protects its own while punishing anyone who stands up to it. Committee member Chen leaned forward. Ms. Tyson, are you alleging that school staff collaborated with outside organizations to retaliate against you professionally? I'm saying the timing is extremely convenient. And when we tried to handle this quietly through proper channels, we were rejected and punished. That's why we're here, because the internal process has failed. I want to speak. Chanel's voice was heard. She hadn't planned this. Wanda was supposed to present everything, but seeing her mother standing alone against a system designed to silence them, Chanel couldn't stay silent. Wanda looked back. Her face bore an expression of both surprise and pride. She stepped aside to make room. Chanel stepped forward with trembling steps. Even though she was 17, she felt both very young and infinitely old. The board members watched her with expressions ranging from sympathy to suspicion. The cameras focused on her face. Her classmates and community members leaned forward. "My name is Chanel Tyson. I'm a junior at Hollander High School. My GPA is 3.9. I've loved math since I was 8. And this semester, Mr. Hollander did everything in his power to make me hate math." She gripped the edges of the podium tightly. "Every day, no matter how well I perform, no matter how perfect my homework is, I walk into his class knowing none of that matters. Because he's already decided I don't belong there. He thinks students who look like me aren't actually smart, that we're just lucky, or that we cheat or get help." Chanel's voice trembled, but she continued. "Do you know what it's like to watch the teacher's eyes glide right over you as if you were invisible when you raise your hand to answer? To watch your answer get erased because admitting you're right means admitting they're wrong, even when you've solved a problem perfectly? To pour your heart into studying, get a perfect grade, and be accused of cheating while the students who had the answers beforehand are praised?" Williams's eyes welled up. Kim was taking notes with sharp, angry strokes. "I'm not the first student this has happened to. If you don't do something, I won't be the last." Chanel looked at each board member. "Marcus Wheeler is here. He dropped Mr. Hollander's class last year because the discrimination became unbearable. Jordan Morris just transferred here and is already experiencing the same situation. Darnell Jackson can tell you about similar treatment. Maya Chen can describe everything she witnessed throughout the semester." She took a deep breath. "We have documents. We have witnesses. We have recorded evidence. We have statistical evidence. What we need is for you to actually do something. Because right now your silence is telling every student of color in this district that we don't matter. It's telling us we have to accept being treated as second-class citizens. If you have the wrong skin color, being perfect isn't enough." Chanel took a step back. Wanda immediately wrapped her arm around her shoulders. Kim looked shaken. "Thank you, Chanel. We need to hear from the other witnesses as well. The committee is prepared to extend the hearing if necessary." One by one, they stepped forward. Marcus Wheeler described the breaking point where he chose his mental health over constant rejection, unfair grading, and fighting a protected teacher. Jordan Morris said he switched schools for better opportunities but faced the same discrimination. Darnell highlighted that the issue extends beyond a single class by sharing similar experiences with other teachers. Maya Chen's testimony was particularly devastating. "I'm the kind of student Mr. Hollander considers good, Asian, quiet, never challenging him. I saw him treat my classmates completely differently. I saw him ignore those who raised their hands, grade the same assignments differently, and make comments implying that students didn't belong here. I documented these because one day someone would be brave enough to stand up, and they would need witnesses." The testimonies lasted 90 minutes. By the end, it had become undeniable that this was a pattern. The board members looked stunned, angry, and ashamed. Finally, Principal Carter was allowed to speak. He stood at the podium. His former confidence had been replaced by visible discomfort. "Board members, I assure you that I take these allegations seriously. However, I think it's important to note that Mr. Hollander has been an exemplary teacher for the past 5 years. His AP exam success rates are among the highest in the region. The math competition team has won numerous championships under his coaching. So winning competitions justifies discrimination?" Williams's voice cut in like a knife. "Are you really saying that?" "No, of course not. I'm just explaining the context. The context is that you received numerous complaints and did nothing," Kim cut in. "Ms. Tyson conveyed her concerns directly to you. What was your response?" Carter shifted in his seat. "I discussed the concerns with Mr. Hollander. So what happened next? Was your daughter suspended from school on suspicion of cheating? Did Ms. Tyson face professional retaliation? Is that what addressing her concerns means to you? The academic integrity investigation is ongoing. Based on what evidence?" Hayes asked. "A perfect test score. Yet you have evidence that other students obtained answers in advance?" The questioning lasted 20 minutes. Carter's explanations faltered. Cracks began to appear in his professional facade. At best, it emerged that he had ignored serious complaints. At worst, he had actively participated in the retaliation. Finally, Kim called a brief recess. The board members retreated to their private rooms for what felt like hours, 18 minutes. Chanel sat waiting with her mother and the group. News cameras recorded every moment. This story would make headlines tomorrow. When the board returned, Kim's face was grim but resolute. After reviewing the evidence presented this evening and consulting with legal counsel, this board is taking immediate action. Hollander is placed on administrative leave effective immediately until the comprehensive investigation is complete. An independent investigator will be appointed to thoroughly examine these allegations. Chanel was overcome by such a powerful sense of relief that her head began to spin. Kim continued, "Additionally, we are launching a broader investigation into how discrimination complaints in the district are handled. Principal Carter, you are also placed on administrative leave until the review of your response to the reported concerns is complete. We will immediately appoint an interim principal and an interim math teacher." Carter's face went pale. People in the room were crying, hugging one another, while some were silently cheering. Furthermore, Kim's voice cut through the noise, "We are requesting that the State Department of Education review our district's policies and procedures for handling discrimination complaints. And Ms. Tyson," she looked directly at Wanda, "the allegations of professional retaliation against you are extremely serious. We will submit all relevant information to the appropriate authorities for investigation." Wanda's hand found Chanel's and squeezed it tightly. "Finally," said Kim, "Chanel Tyson's suspension is being lifted immediately. She will be able to return to school tomorrow, and all academic sanctions resulting from the suspension will be expunged from her record. The allegation of academic dishonesty has been dismissed." The room erupted. Chanel buried her face in her mother's shoulder and her tears finally began to flow. A 3-week suspension, being accused of cheating, watching her mother face retaliation. Everything had been accepted, everything addressed. It wasn't over yet. There would still be investigations, hearings, appeals, but this was the beginning of justice. When the meeting ended and people rushed forward to congratulate them, Chanel saw Mr. Rhodes standing off to the side. His eyes were teary, but there was a look of pride on his face. She made her way through the crowd to reach him. "Thank you," she said simply, "for watching over us all these years, for recording it, for speaking up." "No, my child." Mr. Rhodes shook his head. "Thank you. You did what the other students couldn't. You stood up at a moment when standing up could have caused everything to collapse. You showed the courage I've been searching for my entire career." She hugged him briefly. "Your grandmother would have been proud of you. I knew her. You know, she marched in the 60s. She fought for integration. She would have seen herself in you." Outside, news cameras recorded Wanda and Chanel's first statement. Wanda kept it brief. "Tonight, the school administration did the right thing. We hope this leads to real and lasting change that protects all students. No child should have to fight this hard just to be treated fairly at their own school." The next morning, the news was everywhere. Local news programs opened with the story. Regional newspapers ran the story. By the afternoon, national education blogs were discussing the case. When Chanel returned to school on Tuesday, she saw that everything had changed. Students she had never spoken to before stopped her in the hallways to tell her they believed her, that they had seen it too, and that she was brave. Teachers looked at her differently, some with respect, others uncomfortable at being reminded that their silence had caused harm. The substitute math teacher was Dr. Patricia Morrison, a retired professor brought in from a local state university. She greeted Chanel with genuine warmth. "I've reviewed your work this semester. You're exactly where you need to be in this class. Welcome." There was no condescension, no doubt, only acceptance of her abilities. This stood in such sharp contrast to Hollander's treatment that Chanel nearly burst into tears. The hospital investigation into Wanda was dropped within 48 hours. The administrator who had initiated the investigation suddenly clarifying the misunderstanding. The connections were now clear. Retaliation was undeniable. By Friday, the district had hired an independent investigator, a retired state education official known for his meticulous and impartial work. He began interviewing students and teachers, examining grade distributions and disciplinary records not just from Hollander's classes, but across the entire district. The pattern he uncovered was worse than expected. Hollander was not alone. He was part of a broader culture that imposed harsher disciplinary penalties on students of color and questioned their abilities, even when there was no room for doubt regarding white students. The investigation would last 3 months, but changes had already begun. The interim principal implemented a new policy requiring all discrimination complaints to be investigated by an outside party. The board approved mandatory bias training for all staff. A student advisory committee was established to review disciplinary patterns every 3 months. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough, but it was a step in the right direction. A week after the board meeting on Sunday, Chanel sat in her room surrounded by college brochures. She had begun researching schools known for strong math programs and for supporting diverse students in STEM fields: MIT, Stanford, Caltech, Howard, places where her brilliant mind wouldn't be questioned but celebrated. Her phone vibrated. An email from an unknown address, lauren.martinez@mit.edu. Her heart racing, she opened the email. Dear Tyson, my name is Dr. Lauren Martinez. I am an admissions counselor at MIT. I learned about your situation through the news and wanted to reach out to you personally. Your courage in standing up against discrimination, combined with your obvious mathematical talent, represents exactly the kind of student MIT is looking for. You are currently in 11th grade, but I wanted to encourage you to apply for early admission when the time comes. Based on your academic achievements and the strength of character you've demonstrated, I believe you would be an excellent candidate for our full scholarship program. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions about MIT or the application process. We look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Dr. Lauren Martinez. Chanel read the email 3 times, then stumbled toward the kitchen where Wanda was preparing dinner. Mom, on a full scholarship. Wanda read the email, her eyes welling up. My smart girl. See? This is what happens when people finally see you for who you really are. They stood side by side in their small kitchen, hugged each other, and shed tears of joy. The fight wasn't over, but they had won their first major battle. And now, doors that had seemed impossible just months ago were opening. Tomorrow, Chanel would return to her math classes with a teacher who truly respected her. She would continue to document, advocate, and ensure the changes were permanent. She would help other students find their voices. But tonight she allowed herself to feel the victory. Hard-won, costly, but a real victory. Justice was no longer just an abstract concept. It was something she had fought for and achieved. And this knowledge would carry her forward, no matter what came next. The investigation results arrived on a cold February morning, 3 months after the school board meeting that had changed everything. Chanel was solving a complex problem on the board during Dr. Morrison's math class, when Principal Thompson's assistant appeared at the door holding a note. Dr. Morrison read the note, looked at Chanel, and shook his head. Ms. Tyson, you need to come to the principal's office. Gather your things. Under Dr. Morrison's leadership, the class had learned to be different. Instead of an uncomfortable silence, the students murmured supportive comments. Jordan gave her a thumbs up. Maya squeezed her shoulder as she passed by. Dr. Thompson, the new principal, permanently appointed following Carter's dismissal, greeted Chanel in her office with a warm yet serious expression. Wanda was already there, having been called in from her shift at County General. The hospital investigation had been definitively closed, and the administrator who had initiated it had been quietly reassigned to another position.
I wanted both of you here while we discuss the findings of the investigation, said Dr.
Thompson, settling behind her desk. She, a black woman in her 50s who had spent 20 years teaching and administering in urban areas before being hired to restructure Hollowbrook. The independent investigator submitted his final report yesterday. The school board reviewed the report in an emergency session this morning. She opened a thick file. The findings are comprehensive and damning. Mr. Hollowbrook engaged in systematic discrimination against students of color for 5 years. The investigator documented over 200 instances of unequal treatment, unfair grading practices, and deliberate efforts to exclude Black and Hispanic students from advanced math courses. Wanda's hand found Chanel's under the table and held it tightly. Among the evidence are grading patterns showing that Black students received an average of 1.2 grade points. The fact that 89% of students of color, who made up 31% of his classes, were subject to disciplinary referrals. Documents showing that while he accused students of color of cheating for performing well honestly, he provided exam information in advance to selected students, all white. Dr. Thompson looked up. The board unanimously voted to immediately terminate Mr. Hollander's employment. He may not be rehired for any position in this district. Additionally, the State Board of Education has been notified and is evaluating whether to revoke his teaching license entirely. Chanel felt the tension she had been carrying for months finally ease. The decision to terminate Principal Carter's employment was also approved. The investigation revealed that over the past 3 years he had received at least 12 formal complaints regarding but also received at least 12 official complaints regarding other teachers and ignored them. His failure to investigate these complaints, combined with evidence that he participated in retaliation against the complainants, constituted gross negligence and potential criminal misconduct. Criminal? Wanda's voice sharpened with curiosity. The district attorney is reviewing whether to file charges of obstruction of justice and conspiracy to violate civil rights. I can't say anything about the likelihood of prosecution, but the board has turned over all the evidence to law enforcement. Dr. Thompson closed the file and looked directly at Chanel. I want to apologize to you personally. This district let you down. Many adults who were supposed to protect you instead contributed to your being harmed. This is unacceptable, and I am determined to ensure it never happens again. What kind of changes are being made? Chanel asked, because apologies without action were just empty words. Comprehensive reforms. Every teacher undergoes mandatory bias training every 3 months. All discrimination complaints are investigated by independent third parties. Student disciplinary records are reviewed monthly by a civilian oversight committee composed of community members and students. Placement decisions for advanced-level classes require input from multiple teachers to prevent gatekeeping. And Thompson smiled slightly. We're implementing an anonymous student feedback system for all teachers, reviewed by the board twice a year. He handed her a piece of paper from the table. I also wanted to let you know that Dr. Morrison has been accepted into a permanent position as our AP Calculus teacher. I was exceptionally impressed by your work this semester. Chanel reflected on the difference 3 months had made. Under Dr. Morrison's instruction, calculus had become enjoyable again. The teacher gave students equal opportunities to speak, praised their sincere efforts, and assigned fair grades. Chanel had challenged her in ways that felt supportive, not hostile. For the first time all year, Chanel was looking forward to her math class. There's one more thing, said Dr. Thompson. The district is establishing a scholarship fund in your name, $5,000 annually to support students of color in STEM education. The first recipient will be selected next year, but I wanted you to know that your courage has created opportunities for the students who come after you. Wanda was crying now, not even trying to hide it. Chanel felt her own eyes stinging. Thank you, she managed to say, for actually doing something, for making a real difference. Thank you for fighting when you had every reason to give up. You've made this district a better place. Dr. Thompson stood up and extended her hand. Now go back to class and keep shining. As she walked back down the hallways, Chanel felt different, lighter. The weight of constantly bracing for discrimination, rejection, and the next attack, that weight was beginning to lift. Now she could just be a student. She could love math without having to fight for the right to be in that room. The spring semester completely transformed Chanel's school experience. Thanks to Dr. Morrison's math classes, her grades improved, not because the class was easier, but because she was finally being evaluated fairly. Assignments came back with constructive feedback instead of arbitrary point deductions. Exams were graded based on mathematical accuracy. By March, Chanel was the top student in her class. One afternoon after school, Dr. Morrison approached her to offer an opportunity. The state math competition is in 6 weeks. I think you should compete. You're ready. Chanel had watched Hollander's carefully selected team, all white students, all his favorites, compete for years. The thought that she could now be on that team seemed unreal to her. I've never competed before. That's ridiculous, given your talent. Mr. Hollander deliberately excluded qualified black students from competition opportunities. Dr. Morrison's statement was firm. This situation is going to change. I'm rebuilding the team based on true merit. You, Jordan, Darnell, all of you must compete. Will you join? Chanel thought for about 3 seconds. Yes, absolutely yes. The team preparing for the state competition looked different from the roster Hollander had carefully selected. Chanel, Jordan, and Darnell joined Maya and 2 other students. It was a diverse group united by genuine mathematical talent rather than teachers' favoritism. After school, they worked together, solved complex problems, and supported each other's growth. Dr. Morrison coached with enthusiasm and fairness. When students struggled, he helped them understand the concepts rather than dismissing their potential. When they succeeded, he celebrated without surprise, because of course they could do it. The state math competition was held on a Saturday in late April at a university 2 hours away. Families filled the auditorium, students gathered nervously, comparing their notes. Chanel wore her Hollowbrook High School team t-shirt with a pride that had seemed impossible just 6 months earlier. The competition was intense, consisting of 5 rounds of increasingly difficult problems, both individual and team-based. Chanel immersed herself in the pure joy of problem-solving, free from the shadow of discrimination. Beside her, Jordan was grinning as he tried to find an elegant solution. Darnell was muttering to himself as he checked his calculations. When the results were announced that afternoon, Hollowbrook placed second overall. This was their highest ranking in 8 years. Chanel won the individual first-place award in the advanced category. As she accepted her trophy, she thought of all the talented students Hollander had deprived of this opportunity. Marcus Wheeler, expelled from school last year. Students who had given up on math because a teacher convinced them they weren't good enough. This trophy was for all of them. Dr. Morrison proudly placed the second place and proudly placed it on the front panel, leading the team back. Do you know what this proves? He said. Talent was always there, it just needed a teacher who could recognize it. The local newspaper featured the team's success on the front page and highlighted the dramatic turnaround under the new leadership. Comments on the online version were overwhelmingly supportive, though a few defended Hollander, claiming he was a victim of political correctness. Chanel had learned to ignore these voices. What mattered more were the messages from younger students, especially black students, saying they now had the courage to take advanced courses. The changes at Hollowbrook had given them the confidence to believe they could truly be welcomed in honors classes. Chanel's struggle had opened doors for them. In May, the official MIT scholarship offer arrived in the mail. As Chanel opened the thick envelope with trembling hands, Wanda waited anxiously by her side. "Dear Miss Tyson," the letter began, "we are pleased to offer you admission to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's class of 2029 and a full presidential scholarship covering tuition, room and board for 4 years." The remainder of the letter detailed research opportunities, academic support resources, and a personal note from Dr. Martinez. "Your mathematical talent and personal courage make you exactly the kind of student MIT is looking for. We would be honored to have you join us," Wanda screamed. Actually, she screamed with joy and started jumping around in their small living room. Chanel joined her. The two of them cried and laughed until they collapsed onto the couch, clutching the letter tightly between them. "MIT," Wanda repeated. "My baby is going to MIT." "I'm going to MIT," Chanel repeated, testing the words, turning them into reality. The scholarship was worth over $300,000 over 4 years. It was an amount that would have been impossible to obtain without this intervention. Dr. Martinez had kept his word from that first EADA mail. Chanel's courage had been rewarded with an opportunity. The news spread quickly in Hollowbrook. Dr. Thompson announced it at the school meeting, and the hall echoed with applause. Teachers who had quietly supported Chanel's struggles smiled with genuine pride. Students who had participated in the documentation efforts or spoken at the board meeting felt vindicated. They had helped make this possible. Even students who had been skeptical at first offered their congratulations to Chanel. The success was undeniable. The change was visible. What had seemed like troublemaking turned out to be necessary advocacy. Another significant event occurred in May. Mr. Rhodes announced his retirement. His 23 years of service would conclude with the school year. The district held a small ceremony to honor his dedication, but the real celebration took place in the church basement, where the community had gathered for the first time. Deacon Harris organized an evening to honor Mr. Rhodes. He filled the room with testimonies from the students he had helped, the families he had supported, and the changes he had witnessed. When it was, the crowd stood before the room, overflowing with gratitude. "Mr. Rhodes could have remained silent," she said, looking at the elderly man sitting with quiet dignity. "He could have decided this wasn't his fight and prioritized keeping his job over standing up for students. Instead, he documented injustice for years and waited for the moment when his evidence could make a difference." She held up the photocopied notebook she'd given him. This notebook helped prove that this situation was a pattern. His testimony convinced the board that these were not isolated incidents, but systematic discrimination. He took the risk of retaliation to speak the truth, and thanks to that courage, the students who come after me will have a fairer chance. Mr. Rhodes accepted the community's gratitude with his characteristic humility, but when he pulled Chanel aside later, his eyes were shining with emotion. "Do you know why I helped you? Because I saw my own daughter in you. She's a doctor now. But back in high school, she almost gave up on science because a teacher told her that black girls didn't belong in advanced chemistry. I had to force myself not to go over there and tell that teacher exactly what I was thinking." She squeezed Chanel's shoulder. "But my daughter didn't give up, and when I saw you facing the same struggle my child did, I couldn't stay silent anymore. You reminded me that every generation deserves better than to accept discrimination as normal. Thank you for having the courage I didn't have back then." Graduation was approaching with the sweet anticipation of endings and beginnings. Chanel, dressed in her white graduation gown with gold honor cords draped around her neck, was waiting backstage in the auditorium. The very same auditorium where the school board had held that critical meeting 7 months earlier. The cycle was complete. Wanda, wearing the new dress she'd specially ordered, was seated among the audience. Beside her were Darnell's family, Jordan's parents, Maya's mother, and Marcus Wheeler, who had driven from his new school to watch. Mr. Rhodes was there in his best suit. Dr. Morrison sat with the faculty, beaming with pride. Dr. Thompson began the ceremony with an opening speech acknowledging the challenges and growth, a diplomatic nod to the investigations and reforms. He then introduced a special guest. "Dr. Lauren Martinez from MIT has come here today to personally present a scholarship to one of our graduating seniors." "Dr. Martinez." Chanel's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. Dr. Martinez stepped onto the stage in her professional attire, holding a folder bearing MIT's seal. "I am here to honor Chanel Tyson," Dr. Martinez said into the microphone. "When awarding MIT presidential scholarships, we seek students who combine intellectual excellence with character strength, students who not only strive for personal success, but also work to create systems where everyone can succeed. She opened the folder. Chanel demonstrated her mathematical brilliance while facing systemic discrimination. Instead of accepting unfair treatment, she documented the evidence, organized her community, and fought for justice that would benefit not only herself, but every student who follows in her footsteps. This courage, combined with her academic achievements, embodies MIT's values. Dr. Martinez called Chanel to the stage. As she climbed the steps, Chanel felt the weight of her journey, from being expelled from a math class to being honored at graduation, from a teacher's mockery to MIT's recognition. Dr. Martinez presented the scholarship certificate with both hands. Then did something unexpected. He embraced Chanel. "You're going to do amazing things," he whispered. "MIT is lucky to have someone like you." The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Wanda couldn't hold back her tears. Chanel stood on that stage, holding the proof of her future in her hands, and felt the magnitude of what she had achieved. Later, during the commencement speeches, Chanel was asked to speak as one of the top-performing students. She had prepared a speech about gratitude and growth, but as she stood at the podium looking at the faces representing her entire journey, she spoke from the heart instead. "7 months ago, I was expelled from school due to baseless accusations. My mother faced professional retaliation for standing up for me. We were told not to cause trouble for our family, to accept the situation as it was, and to be grateful for what we had, even if it was discrimination disguised as education." She paused for a moment to let that truth sink in. "We didn't accept that. We documented the evidence. We organized our community. We demanded justice. And because we refused to stay silent, this school is different now. It's not perfect. There's still work to be done, but it's better." Chanel looked directly at the students in the lower grades. "To every student who has faced discrimination, who has been told you don't belong here, whose teachers have questioned your abilities or your right to be in advanced classes, document everything. Find your witnesses, build your case, and know that standing up isn't causing trouble, it's self-respect. It's demanding the education you deserve." She held up her MIT scholarship. "When we refuse to settle for less than our worth, when we stand up for ourselves and for one another, when we insist that the system change to serve all students equally, not just those it was designed to benefit, that's when these things become possible." Her voice grew stronger. "I'm going to MIT to study math, but I'll also learn to build systems where students don't have to be heroes to receive fair treatment, to create educational structures that recognize talent regardless of who possesses it. And then I'll return, maybe not exactly to Hollowbrook, but to communities like this one, to ensure that no student has to fight as hard as I did just to be seen." The applause was thunderous. First the students, then the parents, and finally the faculty stood up. Even the skeptics had risen to their feet, accepting the undeniable truth. Chanel had made this a better place. After the ceremony, as families gathered to take photos and offer congratulations, Dr. Morrison pulled Chanel aside. "I have something for you." He handed her a journal, a leather-bound, expensive, beautiful journal. "To document your MIT journey. Keep recording your observations, the patterns, the changes you want to make. The world needs your voice." Chanel accepted the journal, running her fingers over the smooth leather. Inside, Dr. Morrison had written, "To Chanel, the one who proved that a single student's courage can transform an entire system. Keep fighting, keep recording, keep demanding better. Dr. M." That night's graduation party at the apartment complex was small but cheerful. Wanda had invited Darnell, Jordan, Maya, and their families. Mr. Rhodes came with his wife. Deacon Harris brought dessert. They all crowded into that small space. Chanel, the small space that had been her home throughout her life, where she had wept over unfair treatment and planned her battle strategy. Marcus Wheeler raised a glass of sparkling apple cider. "To Chanel, who did what I couldn't. To Chanel, who stood up even though standing up meant risking everything. Thanks to you, the next black child taking an advanced math class won't face what we faced. To systemic change," Jordan added, "and to everyone who helped make it happen." They toasted to justice, to courage, to the long struggle that had been won but was never fully over. Because somewhere, there would always be another Hollander, another system perpetuating discrimination, another student in need of advocates. But now there was also a roadmap for resistance, proof that courage could prevail, proof that ordinary people working together could overcome institutional injustice. As the party ended and the guests departed, Chanel sat on the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by the traces of her journey, diaries filled with documented events, detention records that seemed like punishment but became evidence, the perfect exam paper she scored 100% on, which triggered the false accusation, newspaper clippings related to the investigation, a math competition trophy, an MIT scholarship letter. Each piece told a part of the story: the discrimination faced, the courage shown, the community that organized, the justice achieved. Wanda appeared at the door. "What's next? Are you ready? Chanel looked at her mother, the woman who had fought by her side every step of the way, risked her own career to defend her daughter's honor, and never once suggested backing down. I'm ready. I'm scared, but I'm ready. Good. Because MIT is just the beginning. You're going to accomplish great things, sweetheart. You'll change systems, help people, make the world a better place. Wanda's voice was choked with emotion. I'm bursting with pride. I couldn't have done any of this without you. We did this together. That's what family does. We fight each other's battles together until we win. The summer was spent preparing. Chanel worked part-time to save money. She took advanced online math courses to prepare for college-level math. She reached out to other MIT students through social media, found her own group, and began building a community before arriving on campus. In August, Dr. Thompson called with unexpected news. The State Department of Education's broader investigation, based on Hollowbrook's evidence, had identified patterns of discrimination in 3 other school districts as well. Reforms were being mandated across the region. Chanel's fight rippled out, reaching schools she would never attend and students she would never meet. Seta started something much bigger than she could have imagined, said Dr. Thompson. Thank you for that. The day to go to MIT had arrived. Wanda drove Chanel to campus in their old Honda, packed with everything she owned. The journey took 8 hours. Crossing state lines, they transitioned from the familiar small-town scenery to the urban landscape of MIT. Checking into the dorm felt surreal. Other freshmen had arrived with similar excitement and nervousness. Chanel's roommate was a bright girl from California. The two bonded immediately, sharing their experiences of feeling underestimated. Wanda helped Chanel unpack her belongings. She made the small dorm room feel like home with photos and familiar objects. When it was time to say goodbye, they hugged each other for a long time in the parking lot. You'll be amazing, Wanda whispered. Just stay exactly as you are, smart, brave, never compromise on your worth. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetie. Now go learn how to change the world. Chanel watched her mother drive away, then turned to face her future. The MIT campus stretched out before her. Buildings filled with the world's brightest minds, laboratories where groundbreaking research was conducted, classrooms where she would both be challenged and supported. She pulled out her phone, snapped a photo of the main entrance, and sent it to her group chat with Darnell, Jordan, and Maya. I'm here. Time to get to work. The replies came immediately. Darnell, show them what Hollowbrook taught you. Excellence and justice. Jordan, I'm proud of you. Change the world. Maya, you're going to do incredible things. That evening, Chanel attended her first orientation meeting. Dr. Martinez was there, greeting the new students one by one. When he saw Chanel, his smile was sincere and warm. Welcome to MIT. Have you settled in yet? It still feels like a dream, Chanel admitted. It's as if I'll wake up and find myself back in Mr. Hollander's classroom, being told I don't belong here. You belong here, Dr. Martinez said firmly. Never doubt that. Your intelligence, your courage, your commitment to justice, that's exactly what we're looking for at MIT. And I promise, our professors will appreciate your intelligence rather than question it. He was right. Chanel's first math class the next day was taught by Professor Eleanor Chen, a renowned expert in number theory. When Chanel raised her hand to answer a complex question, Professor Chen immediately called on her, listened to her solution all the way through, and responded with a simple nod. Excellent work. That's exactly the kind of approach I was hoping someone would take. There was no doubt. There was no accusation that she had cheated because her work was too perfect. There was only recognition of her talent and appropriate praise. That was what fair education was all about. It was what Chanel had been fighting for from the very beginning. Not special treatment, just fair treatment. The chance to succeed without constantly having to battle prejudice. As the semester progressed, Chanel threw herself into her studies with a joy she'd forgotten was possible. Math was beautiful again, not hostile, but excitingly challenging. Her professors were demanding yet supportive, encouraging her growth while respecting her intrinsic worth. She also joined MIT's student advocacy groups and worked on initiatives to support underrepresented minorities in STEM fields. Sharing her story helped others realize that their struggles were not personal failures, but systemic issues requiring collective action. On Thanksgiving, Chanel returned to Hollowbrook for the holiday. The school looked the same physically, but the atmosphere had changed. Dr. Thompson's reforms were continuing. The student advisory committee was functioning. Bias training was held every 3 months. The anonymous feedback system had already led to 2 teachers receiving additional professional development on equitable classroom practices. Chanel visited Dr. Morrison's class, where a new group of students was working on advanced math. Among them were several Black and Hispanic students, children who might have been discouraged or marginalized under the old system, but who were now succeeding. You made this happen, Dr. Morrison said quietly as he watched his students work. Every child in this room is benefiting from your courage. That evening, Chanel spoke at a community event organized by Deacon Harris. Young students attended the event with their parents to hear the girl who had fought against discrimination and won. "I'm not a hero," Chanel told them. "I'm just someone who got tired of being treated unfairly and decided to do something about it." You can do the same. Document what happens. Find your witnesses. Build your case. And know that you deserve better than the discrimination being served up under the guise of education. A 10-year-old black girl raised her hand. "What if I'm scared? What if speaking up makes things even worse?" Chanel knelt down to look her in the eyes. "It's normal to be scared. I was terrified too. But do you know what I learned? Staying silent doesn't keep you safe. It just lets injustice continue. Speaking up is scary, but that's how things change. And you don't have to do this alone. Find your community. Find people who believe in you and will fight alongside you. That's how we win." The girl nodded. A determined light shone in her young eyes. Chanel recognized that look. She'd seen it in her own mirror 7 months earlier. As she returned to MIT, Chanel reflected on how far she'd come. From being dismissed in class to being celebrated at one of the world's top universities. From fighting for the right to be seen, to helping others find their voices. From a victim of discrimination to a champion of change. The work wasn't done. There would be other Hollanders, systems that perpetuate inequality, and students in need of advocates. But now there was also evidence that change was possible, that courage mattered, that a single person standing up could transform not just their own life, but entire communities. Chanel Tyson had walked into Mr. Hollander's class as a girl who loved math. From there, she emerged as a young woman who understood that excellence alone was not enough, that we must also fight for systems where excellence can be recognized regardless of who possesses it. And that fight, her commitment to justice, would shape the path she would follow. Beyond MIT, toward whatever future she chose to create. She was smart, she was brave, and she was just getting started.